There is a man standing guard in a jungle that has been silent for 30 years. He still cleans his rifle every morning. He still sleeps in 2-hour shifts, one eye open, listening for footsteps that stopped coming decades ago. He still treats every falling leaf like an enemy patrol, every distant sound like the beginning of an ambush. Nobody told him to stop. Or rather, somebody did many times. Leaflets fell from the sky with the news. Voices called out from loudspeakers. But he couldn't trust any of it, so he kept fighting a war that had already ended, because in his mind, surrender and death looked identical. You know this man better than you think. You've just never called him by his real name. His name is hypervigilance, and he doesn't live in a jungle. He lives behind your ribs. Every time you rewrite the same sentence for the 9th time, every time you check the lock, then check it again, then lie awake wondering if you checked it right. Every time you can't enjoy a good day because some quiet part of you is already bracing for the bad one, that's him, standing post, rifle ready. Convinced that the moment he lowers his guard, everything he's protecting collapses. You call it discipline, you call it excellence. Some of you even call it holiness, as if God were a commanding officer who court-martials anyone caught relaxing. But discipline doesn't leave your jaw clenched at 2 in the morning. Discipline doesn't make your stomach drop when someone says, "We need to talk." What you're carrying isn't devotion. It's a nervous system that never received the order to stand down and has been running on that missing order ever since. Here's the part that should unsettle you. The war you're still fighting ended before you even understood what was happening to you. Somewhere back there, a house that never felt steady, a love that came with conditions, a silence where comfort should have lived, you learned a brutal equation without anyone writing it on a chalkboard. Flawless equals safe, mistake equals abandoned. Nobody sat you down and taught you this on purpose. Your body just recorded it the same way a soldier's ears remember the exact pitch of gunfire for the rest of his life, long after the gun is gone. So you built a post, you started guarding it, and you've been guarding it ever since, calling the exhaustion ambition, calling the never enough standards, calling the fear responsibility. Here's the danger nobody tells you about this kind of guarding. The longer a man stays at a post that's already secure, the more the post becomes his entire identity. He stops being a person who happens to be stationed there. He becomes indistinguishable from the rifle in his hands. Ask him who he is without the mission and he'll go quiet, because underneath the uniform there's a question he's been avoiding for years, one he's almost certain has no safe answer. That's the real cost of unexamined perfectionism. It's not that you fail sometimes. It's that you've built a self that cannot exist without the fight, which means rest doesn't feel peaceful to you. Rest feels like disappearance. This is where most conversations about perfectionism stop. Try harder to relax, they say. Give yourself grace, they say, as if grace were another item on the checklist, something you could schedule between tasks and complete correctly. But you cannot talk a soldier out of a war using logic. He's not being stubborn. He's protecting the only version of survival his body has ever known, and every reasonable argument you throw at him sounds to his ears exactly like the enemy trying a new tactic. So the real question was never, how do I stop being a perfectionist? The real question is, who has the authority to walk into that jungle and end the war for good? Because here's what almost nobody notices. A leaflet dropped from far away doesn't work on a man like this. A pamphlet signed by someone he's never met, he assumes it's a trick, another test of his loyalty. The only thing that ever reaches a man that entrenched is a person. Someone who walks in unarmed and stands close enough for him to see with his own eyes that there's nothing left to guard against. That's exactly what happened to the real soldier this story is built on. He didn't surrender to an order printed on paper. He surrendered to a face, his actual former commander, standing directly in front of him after decades, saying the words in person instead of through a leaflet carried by wind. Only presence broke 30 years of vigilance, not information, presence. Now sit with what that means for you. You have spent years trying to earn your way out of the fear through performance, more discipline, more control, more flawless execution, as if the exit from hypervigilance is one more task you could complete correctly if you just tried a little harder. But you cannot perform your way out of a wound that was never about performance in the first place. You were never actually failing a test. You were guarding a post nobody has asked you to guard for a very long time. And this is where the story turns, because the God you've been performing for was never the commanding officer you imagined in the dark. He is the one who walks into the jungle himself, not to inspect your post, not to grade the last 30 years of your vigilance and hand you a final score. He comes close enough for you to lower the rifle without it costing you anything, because his love was never the reward waiting at the end of your effort. It was the ground you were already standing on the entire time you thought you were still earning it. This is the part your nervous system has never been told plainly, without conditions attached. Intimacy with him was never hiding behind the flawless version of you. It was waiting on the other side of you, finally believing the war is over. Notice what actually happens the moment true rest arrives for a soldier like this. It isn't relief exactly. At first, it's disorientation, almost grief. Because if the war is truly over, who is he now, if not the one who guards? For a moment, laying the rifle down can feel more frightening than picking it back up ever did. That disorientation is not a setback. It is the sound of an identity finally becoming large enough to hold more than survival. You are allowed to feel that same disorientation. The quiet after the striving stops can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, before it ever feels like home. That discomfort is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that the fight is finally, actually ending, and your body simply hasn't caught up to the news yet. Because rest was never the reward you get after becoming good enough. Rest is the proof that you were already held before you did anything at all. Sonship was never a rank you climbed toward through obedience or output. It was the ground beneath the uniform the entire time, and the uniform, it turns out, was always optional. So here is the truth this jungle has been hiding. You don't need a better strategy for managing the war. You don't need a stricter routine, a longer prayer list, a cleaner performance. You need someone to walk in and end it, and he already has. The only thing left standing between you and that rest is whether you'll finally let the rifle touch the ground and let yourself be found, not as a soldier who succeeded, but as a son who was never actually alone out there. Because somewhere right now there's still a version of you standing at that post, waiting for a signature you'll never see coming, one written not on paper, but in presence, in nearness, in a father who walked further into the jungle than you ever thought he would. And the moment you finally recognize the one standing in front of you, you'll realize something that changes everything. He's been walking toward you far longer than you were ever walking away.